and welcome. I'm Alas Garjuk and you're watching Head to Head with UATV. On May 7th, incumbent President Petro Poroshenko appointed 75 new Supreme Court judges. The competition for vacant posts lasted some 8 months. On the same day, the head of the newly established High Anticorruption Court was elected, 37-year-old Olena Tanasevych. To discuss this, we're joined in the studio today by Iryna Shyba, Executive Director of the DEJURE Foundation. Hello, and thank you for joining us today.
Hello.
So, as far as I know, 600 candidates were competing to become the judge of the Supreme Court, but 78 only were selected. What do you think about the new judges?
Of the Supreme Court or
of the Supreme Court?
Supreme Court. We as a society are really concerned about the composition that actually is in the Supreme Court now, because it's already a second competition to the Supreme Court. More than a year ago, already 30 people with a lack of integrity or with a dubious integrity reputation were appointed to the Supreme Court and started to work there. However,
30 people.
30 people. During this competition, 15 more candidates with a negative, that there is a negative information about their background, their reputation, or there is lack of information about the sources for their income were also appointed.
How did they get through the competition, in your opinion?
It's quite clear to us how they were appointed, because the council that was running the competition, the High Qualification Commission of Judges, also consists mostly of the judges of the old system. So they were closing their eyes on different kind of mistakes and wrongdoings in the history or biographies of the candidates. They ignored the negative opinions of the Public Integrity Council that actually put it there, it's publicly announced that they have a negative information about so many of those candidates. But they decided to ignore these candidates, this information, and to appoint those candidates to the Supreme Court.
Have you been researching all the information on all the 600 candidates that were competing to join the Supreme Court? Maybe you would, I don't know, make a new list, or your own list of those ones who would be the most eligible to take a position.
It is always hard to be 100% sure about any candidates, because even though we have some information that is in the public resources and we've been analyzing it together with other NGOs and the Public Integrity Council, however, there is so many candidates, they are in the gray zone. There is not enough information about them or about their backgrounds. For example, those who come in from the academic background, that they don't submit the electronic declaration. They submitted it for the first time when they applied for the position. So we didn't have a time or possibility to check them for sure.
To research everything, well, I understand. But there were 78 candidates, but 75 of them had been appointed. What's about the 3?
Yeah, there was because another stage after the High Qualification Commission of Judges announces the results of the competition and says this is a list of winners, they submit this list to the High Council of Justice that reviews the list again. And they might dismiss some candidates and not appoint them if there is a negative information about any of this judge. If they have any
Was there
doubts.
negative information about these 3?
Surprisingly, there was a judge that I would really like to pay your attention to. This was Petro Poroshenko, who was announced as a judge of the year by one of the public surveys last year. He's well known as a human rights protector and actually a good expert in the field. However, the High Council of Justice decided to dismiss him because he referred to the court of another country without specific permission. So there is a specific regulation how the court judges, they should contact other courts in other countries. But he submitted not in accordance with those rules. So on this ground, they decided not to appoint him to the High Supreme Court.
The Supreme Court.
So
they canceled his application, basically.
Yes, so they didn't cancel his application, but they decided we will not appoint you even though you won the competition. However, they appointed the candidates with even more negative information in their past, like the person who allowed 21 drunk drivers to avoid punishment, or the judges who actually allowed judges of Maidan to stay on their position. Ihor Benedescu, who used to be a head of the High Council of Justice, the same council that was deciding on his appointment, he won, he took part in the competition and he won. He's now appointed as a judge of the Supreme Court. In the past, he was actually considering the cases of so-called Maidan judges after the revolution, the High Council of Justice also was responsible for deciding to fire those judges or left them on the position. And he was the one who actually, among other judges, members of this council decided that they should stay. So this person now going to be also the member of the Supreme Court.
This is a very strange situation. And what about civic society? Can some activists influence this process? Or now when it's decided, when there was this swearing ceremony, there was no rollback?
Unfortunately, the judges are now appointed for the lifetime. So the only possibility to fire a judge is if the judge commits any kind of crime or wrongdoing, he can be actually fired from his position. But this decision also makes the High Council of Justice, the same council that actually just appointed these judges, even though already we have this negative information of their background.
Basically, it's linked. Both
yes.
structures are linked to each
So
other.
it's the same structure. The High Council of Justice is the same structure that decides on whom to appoint and whom to fire. So if the council and its composition already decided that they want to see these people in the Supreme Court, so we don't believe that they will change their opinion soon. However, we think that there is a need to be a significant change in the composition of the High Qualification Commission of Judges and the High Council of Justice. Maybe if we include the representative of civil societies to become members of this council, we will see totally different results. Like we saw in the Anti-Corruption Court competition, where the international experts participated and they had an equal role. They were equal partners with the Qualification Commission. So they had more power to veto some candidates that they have doubts to, and the results were totally different.
Would you compare for us the results of these appointing procedures and selecting procedures for the Supreme Court and for the High Anti-Corruption Court?
Of course. In a summary of two competitions to the Supreme Court, we received 44 judges with negative backgrounds and dubious reputation sitting in the Supreme Court. However, with the competition to the Anti-Corruption Court, where international partners took part in it and they had the possibility to veto candidates that they have doubts about, they actually vetoed 42 candidates with negative information in their dossiers. So now we have 38 judges of the Anti-Corruption Court, and representative civil society have only doubts about 2 of them. One of them is Iryna Shyba, who actually took a decision back during the Revolution of Dignity. She forbade the peaceful gathering. And another judge, Valeria Chorna, also a regional judge, who has quite big assets that she couldn't explain. Public Council of International Experts interviewed both of them, and they provided some explanations that satisfied the council. However, we didn't see all the documents, so we might not be still sure, but we believe if the council decided that they can stay in the process, that they had the possibility and they actually proved that they made a legal decision or they had the legal income to cover those assets.
This is about a High Anti-Corruption Court.
Yes.
And you mentioned 44 names with negative, with some parts of negative information in the Supreme Court. Could you please explain to the audience then, what is the Supreme Court of Ukraine and what is the High Anti-Corruption Court? What is the jurisdiction and what cases can be reviewed and processed in these courts?
So in Ukraine, we have a 3-stage judicial system. First, there is a first instance court where any person comes and claims for their rights, but it also hears the criminal cases in the first instance, or it can be also business cases. And we have a courts of appeal, and then we have a Supreme Court who decides on the case as a cassational and last instance. So they make a final decision on any case, including cases on anti-corruption. High Anti-Corruption Court will hear the cases of top corruption as a court of first instance, but also as a court of appeal, because there is an appeal chamber inside of this court. But the cassation will be heard, in the Supreme Court. So it's dangerous, even though we have a great composition in the Anti-Corruption Court, the final decision and conviction of the corrupt officials is endangered because the people who will hear their cases in a cassation, they have some negative backgrounds in the past. And we don't trust these people to be really fair and to consider these cases fairly. But Luckily, not all cases go to the cassation, but in any way, we asked many times that there should be a specific appellate chamber in the side of the Supreme Court that should be formed in the way that the Anti-Corruption Court was formed.
So still the issue is very controversial, the issue about the Anti-Corruption Court and the Supreme Court and their cooperation in this cassation process.
Yes, because although we believe in and trust so far the judges who were appointed as the judges of Anti-Corruption
Court,
there is a risk that their decision will be cancelled in the Supreme Court.
Well, let's talk about the newly elected the first head of the newly established Anti-Corruption Court. We know that this is 37-year-old Olena Tanasevych. She graduated from Yaroslav Mudry National Law University in Kharkiv, became a lawyer in 2002. In 2018, she defended her thesis and received her Master's of Law degree. What do you think about the new head of newly established court?
The DEJURE Foundation analyzed each candidate who applied for the High Anti-Corruption Court judge position, including Olena Tanasevych. During our research, we didn't find any negative information about her. Even some journalists pointed out that she has a lot of land registered on her name. However, her husband is a businessman, and his income is quite high. So they could actually prove the sources to buy this land in the past. So we're quite optimistic about her becoming a judge and the head of this court, and especially because she got one of the highest grades during the competition.
When do you believe this court will begin functioning?
Actually, last week the judges of this court, they got together to decide on this issue, and they decided that the court will start to hear cases on the September 5th. This is not the term that we expected, because according to the law, the court should start to work in June, and this was one of the demands of international partners, including of
IMF,
which is really important for the financial support of Ukraine. However, there are some technical obstacles on the way of that, because actually the Anti-Corruption Court doesn't have its premises yet. It still should be refurnished, and there should be some technical works done there. So they temporarily reside in the premises of the Pechersky District Court of Kiev. But to have a possibility to hear the cases in a way that the information is protected, the secret and tentative information is protected, it should have specific premises and specific technical capacity to do that. So this is still should to be done. And also, before it starts, the head of the apparatus of this court should be appointed. Now there is a special commission actually that runs the competition for this position, and this Monday the candidates, 11 candidates who applied for this position, they will have testing, and on 17th of May we expect to have the name of the person who will be the head of apparatus.
Well, let's keep an eye on the unfolding of the situation with the judiciary reform and with the results of the newly established High Anti-Corruption Court, with the possible results of the new judges appointed to the Supreme Court. So far, I thank you for clearing this issue out for us, and thank you for being a guest today.
Thank you for inviting me.
That was Iryna Shyba, Executive Director at the DEJURE Foundation. Thank you for watching Head to Head. I'm Oles Garjuk. Goodbye.